How's it going, guys? My name is Matt. I'm going to be going over today how I passed my commercial single engine check ride. I'm going to go over the stuff that he asked on the oral, stuff that he didn't ask, and then towards the end, I'll go over how the flight went. But it went really well. I really liked the DPE. He made me feel very confident, very comfortable, and we started off about 30, 40 minutes of just chit-chatting back and forth before we got into it. And then the verbal part ended up only lasting probably about hour to hour and a half after all the chit chat. So went really well. I'm going to go kind of in order from kind of things that I can remember. He might have asked me some more things, but I don't feel like there was a question that I didn't know that he asked. I was very, very much prepared for this test, and it really wasn't that hard if you know what to study. But there was not anything I had to look up, so I knew everything, and thankfully I studied the right material. And I'm going to go over today what he asked me. Every check ride will be different, so he might go into more specific things than when he asked me, but you never know. That's why you study for everything. So we kind of started off by the maintenance and documents that are required for the aircraft. So you go on your Aero, you go on your AVH acronym, and just kind of talk about those things. He'll probably ask you more in depth about certain pieces. So if you're kind of struggling, to describe something, he might continue asking about different things. But if you answer the first question right, he might just move on and assume you know. That's kind of what he did with me. So he asked, what is an AD and who issues them and do they expire? He also asked the same thing about airworthiness certificate. So just know what the ADs are for the aircraft, and if if you're going to fly, then you know that you have an airworthiness certificate, hopefully, and it is current. When it expires, what happens? Go ahead and look those things up, brush up on them. He asked me, and we moved on pretty quick. The minimum equipment. So this was a one that you really need to know for this test. Every DP will go over it. So he asked, what is an MEL, minimum equipment list? Does our aircraft have one? I flew for this check ride a Piper P100, so a Piper Archer, and we do not have an MEL for that specific airplane. But we do have in the POH, I basically described it as the documents that are required for VFR day. We have a little list in the POH that I referred to for that. So I told him we had one of those, and then then we'd move on to the kinds of equipment list, and then from there we would refer to 91205, which is your tomato flames, flaps, grab card, that sort of stuff. So I told him that. He was happy with it and moved on. He said, what if our nav light didn't work? Could we go fly? Well, our nav light is needed for VFR night and IFR operations. So I told him during the day, I'd want to have the nav light working, but if it didn't work, then, we could certainly fly. And he said, okay, but, what other things would you have to do? So I said that we'd have to placard it. And then he kind of, I didn't get to it at first, but he kind of led me down the direction, pull the circuit, disconnect it. So label it NOP and disconnect so it's not, causing a fire or something if there's a bad fuse or a bad wire in there. So you can fly NOP and disconnect if you can. That's the answer to that. Moving on to commercial pilot privileges. This is obviously something you're going to be asked. Okay, so what I did to answer this question, and he moved on quick. I said 91416 is for charity, not-for-profit, community events. You're covered under 91416 for those things. And you'd want to make sure, always contact your local FSDO. That's kind of a catch-all thing that you can say to make sure that whatever event that you're doing is covered under 91416. 91417 talks about contacting the FSDO for a letter of agreement. So say that That is kind of covering air tours within 25 nautical miles of the airport and things that you need a letter of agreement for. So just say contact local FSDO 91-417, and I elaborated further and I said part 119 talks about a little bit more about those things in 91-417, and then part 136 talks about commercial air tours in like Yellowstone or like national parks. And there's some different things. Look up part 136. I think he was impressed that I knew that. Systems. Next thing we're going to talk about, systems. So my aircraft has an air data attitude and heading reference system for it. So I'm used to flying with pedostatic and vacuum systems, so the old round gauges, the 6-pack. But now I've moved in to glass and a Garmin G3X. So I had to learn about the AHARS system, which is kind of overwhelming at first. I think that reading your POH, it really explains it well. So he asked about the AHARS systems and the air data computer. What does the AHARS system compute? So that, rate and roll sensors essentially give pitch bank, slip skid, and heading information. And then your air data computer is connected to the, in my airplane, was connected to the pedostatic little thing on the bottom left of the wing. And then that then computes the airspeed, vertical speed, outside temperature, all things like that. So that's what the air data computer and altimeter, that's what the air data computer does. I said that they work together, and I'm like, it's more complicated than the pedostatic, but like that's essentially what it is. He said, okay. And then he asked how the pedostatic system works in the vacuum system in like a normal 172 that I flew. So I remembered that stuff, made sure I didn't just forget it, because I kind of figured he would ask me. So he just asked me what the pedostatic system instruments it covers, and then what the vacuum system instruments do. And he moved on. He didn't even ask how they work. So that was fairly quick too. He asked what, about stuff about our aircraft, the engine, what kind of engine we have, horsepower, propeller, super easy stuff. So, I said we have a Lycoming IO360. And so he said, is that carburetor fuel injected? I said, fuel injected. He might have asked, I think he asked if it was air cooled. I said, yes. He asked about electrical. He didn't go super in depth with it, but he did ask a couple questions. So I told him, how many amps, how many volts our alternator has, how many volts the battery has, and then what if the alternator fails? What happens? Then the battery takes its place, and it's not being charged by the alternator, so you got to be careful of that. But then he asked the primary function device, if that fails, then what? We have a backup. So just know that stuff, be prepared for it. And I wrote vacuum systems, already talked about that. Supplemental oxygen requirements, I believe it's 91 to 11, 91 to 11, I think, I don't know, something like that. Went into just 12.5 to 14,000, need it if over 30 minutes at that altitude, over 14,000, you need it all times, over 15,000, then everybody needs to be offered it. So just quickly ran through that. 91 to 11 also talks about pressurized cabins and the requirements needed for pressurized cabins. He didn't ask me, but I knew it anyway in case he did. So read that and make sure you know it. He asked then about medical, when we need a first, second, and third class, when they expire, what we can do with those, that sort of thing. I ran through it. First class, you need it for PIC under 121. Second class, SIC 121, and exercising your commercial pilot privileges. And third, private pilot, recreational pilot, CFI, that sort of thing. Okay. Next thing, human factors. So this was another thing he talked about for just a little bit. I was just kind of firing him off, so he didn't spend too long. But make sure you know all this stuff. It's important. It's a lot of information, but we got through it pretty quick. Hypoxia, what that is. He didn't ask me the different types of hypoxia and what they are. I knew them. I'm sure he knew that I knew them based on our conversation. Scuba diving, what are the dangers of that? Just the nitrogen levels in the blood can't exit due to the increased pressure from going down. Scuba diving, they bubble from your cells, that sort of thing. Just say that. Most likely we'll move on. I knew even the atmospheric pressure from certain feet down, so you don't need to know. I went a little crazy on it. He then asked about, and then scuba diving, also you need to know 12 hours on just a normal scuba diving under 8,000 feet. If you want to go above 8,000 feet, then you need to wait 24 hours, and then 24 hours if you're going on a deeper scuba dive that needs decompression stops. And then I think he asked what happens, what happens if somebody does suffer from that? You just send supplemental oxygen, sort of thing. I wrote down illusions. I think we talked about illusions. I don't know. I was asked on the instrument about it. I could be thinking about that. Know your illusions, the ICE flags acronym. I go by that. Super easy. Carbon monoxide. What are the dangers of that? The blood can't carry oxygen because basically the carbon monoxide just overpowers the oxygen. The blood can't carry it. So that's the danger of that. It's colorless, odorless, and tasteless. Very hard to detect. I told him, how we can fix it. That if you're already feeling carbon monoxide, like the symptoms, it might be too late. So that's why you have a detector, a sensor, or whatever they're called, carbon monoxide detector, little sticker thing that you put on the airplane, that sort of thing. He then went into how cabin heat works from this. So basically what I said is the exhaust goes through this metal shroud that then surrounds a part of the exhaust. So it's not exhaust fumes that are heating the cabin, but it's the hot exhaust pipes are heating the air inside the shroud. That shroud then redirects into the cabin for cabin heat. So why we talked about it with carbon monoxide, if there is a leak inside of that shroud, then carbon monoxide can flow into the cabin. That's when you close the cabin heat and you open up the air. Say that, it's good. Weather, very, very brief. Asked me what a segment airment was, what a convective segment was. Didn't even ask me about icing. That was it. That was all he asked about weather. I was surprised. Alcohol and meds, we talked about that for a little bit. I believe it's part 68. It could be something else. I think it's part 68. Talks about, obviously we know 8 hours bottle of throttle, right? I personally would not fly unless it was 12 hours after alcohol consumption. And then as a little bonus nugget, I don't think he was looking for it, but maybe it helped my case. I talked about it, I think it's part 68. You could lose your medical privileges if you have an alcohol dependence. So that's something that you can throw in. I would make sure it's in part 68. I'm not sure if it is. It's somewhere in there. Somewhere in the FARs. Then asked the FAA about, he asked about medication. I said, ask your FAA doctor. And I know a pilot that got into a little bit of trouble. Didn't lose his job or anything, but about that, so I kind of tied it in. I'm like, yeah, you need to be careful. Ask your FAA doctor before you're taking any medicine that is questionable. He didn't ask aerodynamics. I was surprised. I was ready to go on about aerodynamics. I hated learning that information. I hated it in private. But I went over it a lot, and I was ready to talk about it. He didn't ask me, so whatever. Didn't ask about carburetors. I mean, I'm sure he knew it was fuel injected, but be able to talk about carburetors, how carburetor icing forms, how carb heat works. Talk about all of that. Talk about be able to draw out a carburetor system and then draw out how the carb heat works. I didn't have to draw anything. I was surprised. I was ready to draw a bunch of stuff. Didn't have to. Surprised. Didn't talk about VORs. Didn't talk about DME. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of other things he might have not asked me, but I think this is all the stuff. And I've gone on for, I don't know, just this 15 minutes now. That was our entire check ride. So obviously I go into further about these things, but it wasn't very long verbal test. What did take long is he asked, pulled out about my commercial cross country VFR, and he looked at it, said, "What altitude would we fly?" We were flying not west, but it was past the 180 degrees or whatever needs. So he asked what altitude I'd fly. I said 4,500. Asked me a little bit of stuff about that cross country, but basically he looked at it and said, "Okay, well, I want you to do." No, okay. The last thing we did, I'll say it here in a minute. He then took my iPad and scrolled around and asked me about the stuff on the sectional chart. Super basic stuff. This is where he kind of tied in airspace. He was just asking what would you cloud clearance visibility you need for Bravo, Delta, Charlie. What else? He didn't ask me anything about like the magenta line. I'm trying to think. Just some like symbols I had not seen. There was one thing. It was like he thought it was kind of funny. It was asking. There was like a little symbol showing like an amphitheater, and I didn't know it. And he was like, "Of course you wouldn't know it. I just wanted to see for fun." I was like, "Okay." So that was like the only thing I didn't know, like what a closed airport looks like, all that stuff on a sectional chart. I'm not going to go super deep into that. But then the last thing, it took a while, not a while, but I mean probably 25, 30 minutes. He had me, I did my nav log, didn't look at my nav log at all. Do a nav log and be prepared for him to look at it at least. Didn't look at mine, didn't even ask for it. I also did weight and balance for the cross country that he gave me, going from Muncie, Indiana to Nashville, Tennessee. I did weight and balance. He then said, "Okay, I want you to do weight and balance right now for a different cross country scenario, still going to Nashville, but adding a different passenger, what would be the fuel, and then he wanted performance calculations on the spot as well for takeoff and landings over a 50-foot obstacle at each." So I had to do that and just look at the charts and the POH. I asked if I could go get the POH. He said, "Sure." Went out the airplane, grabbed the POH, and did it on the charts. I wrote it just in a, he took it. He took it. I forgot I don't know why he needed that as a copy, but I just did it on a little piece of paper like this, handed it, and luckily know how to do weight and balance. Don't rely on ForeFlight. He wanted to see I could hand do it on the spot. And he wasn't overlooking over my shoulder. He was just on his iPad. But I still had to do it on the spot, and I tried to get it done as fast as I could, but and he looked at it for 5 seconds. He goes, "Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, let's go fly." So that was the end of the verbal section. Not much more I could say about it. Like I said, it was like after us talking for 30 or 40 minutes to start, it was probably an hour to an hour and a half at most. So going into the flight part, I don't have anything written down. I'm just going to go off of what we did. We went ahead and went to the active and took off, and we departed out to the northwest. And he then had me fly out a little bit to get out of the Delta, and then said, "Okay, we're going to start with steep turns. Let me know when you're starting the maneuver so I can grade you." So be sure that you do your clearing turns. I was annoying about clearing turns. I think he was over my clearing turns, but that's what you want to be. I did clearing turns before every maneuver. Was annoying about it. So we did steep turns. That was fine. I think the next thing we did was stalls. So we did power on, power off, accelerated stall. He then had me chandelle to the left side, so to my side, did one of those. And then from there, he had me do, I think we're at like 4,500 feet after the chandelle. He said, "Okay, let's do steep spirals." I asked if we could climb to 5,500 feet for the terrain levels and the height above in AGL. in MSL, I guess. 5,500 is good for me. So I asked if we could fly to 5,500. He said yes. We did the steep turns. Be sure to clear your engine after one turn. You do 3, recover. He said fine. Okay, let's go do 8s on pylons. Luckily, I have on my primary function device an overlay of a sectional chart. So I can see where my airplane is in relevance to things on a sectional chart. I saw that there was some towers, and I said, okay, I want to fly a little bit more north to clear these towers. He said, okay. And he just kind of sat there, and I flew north, and then as we cleared the towers, I found a spot, and I was going into the upwind. So I was flying into the wind. You want to enter on the downwind. So I got far enough, and I turned inbound. Now, this is not what I would recommend doing. I meant before the check ride to calculate pivotal altitude. If you're a commercial student, you know what calculating pivotal altitude is for 8s on pilots. But calculate your pivotal altitude for different airspeeds, and then have it like on a little sheet to like, so if you're flying at like, I think I was at 105, my ground speed. Have that, you can look at it and say, okay, this is my pivotal altitude for that specific airspeed. It doesn't change. It's 105 squared divided by 11.3, and then you add the height above the ground, right? So super easy. I didn't have it, and I didn't realize it until I was flying that I didn't have it. I'm like, oh shoot. So he didn't say anything. I pulled out my phone and just did the calculation like really quick, and I was like, okay, pivotal altitude is 1,860 feet. It was okay. So we did one lap of 8s on pylons, and I said, do you want me to do another? He said, no, let's go back to Muncie. Went back to Muncie, did a normal landing, had me full stop, taxi back, and then we did a soft field takeoff and landing. Be sure you're landing on your mains, you're pulling back, and when you're going on to take off for a soft field, you're pulling back to simulate that you're on grass. That was okay. It was the stall horn kind of went off. I was pitching back. I was really afraid of landing flat, so the stall horn was kind of going off. I was okay. I wasn't about to stall, but it was kind of going off. I was kind of afraid he would. I was afraid he'd fail me. I knew it wasn't like dangerous, but it was different. It was fine. He had me taxi back. We did a short field takeoff and landing. Did that. Super easy, right? Short fields are fine. Be sure to just pitch for VX when you're not clear of the 50-foot obstacle. Say that you're pitching for VX, hold that, and then he said clear the obstacle, and then I pitched for VY and dumped the flaps, right? And then, so last thing we did was power off 180. He let me know beforehand that's what we were doing. We did a full stop again, and I asked him when we were taxiing back, I said, will I get a go around for this if like something's not looking right? And he said, I can't allow you to do one unless there's something out of your control, like a coyote going across the runway, somebody takes off in front of you, something out of your control. But in normal circumstance, he said, no, you have to do it right the first time, unfortunately. So I said, okay, we did it, and you always want to be a little bit high, right? And for people that have done power off 180s, you understand. But I came in a little high, and I think I put one notch of flaps in, and I just slipped it down like super, like not aggressive. Like I didn't gain like any airspeed. It was a perfect slip, but I wasn't like super high, but I had to slip. And so I slipped it down, got down, and then I was coming down like pretty much right on point, and I really didn't want to float and ground effect too much. So I came down right in the center of the 1,000-footers, which was the landing point for us. It was probably my best power off 180 I've ever done. It was awesome. So it's a good way to end. He just said, okay, taxi back to the ramp. Didn't say anything on the taxi back. So I figured that I'd passed, but you have to fly until the engine's off, right? So I I taxied back to the FBO and turned off the engine. He said, okay, congratulations. Let's go get your paperwork for your commercial pilot license. Felt really great. Was an awesome check ride. My DPE was 10 out of 10 guy. Would fully recommend him to anyone. If you want to know who my DPE is, I don't want to just give their name. And you're in Indiana area, I can give you two good ones, my instrument one and my commercial one. Really, really good guys. So shoot me a comment and I can give you their names. But it was great. So very, very pleased with how it went, and glad that it's over with. I'm starting my CFI now. It's going to be much harder. Not going to be the easy check ride like this one was. So I really got to buckle down. And I'm starting my CFI, and then I'm going to start my trainings for like the two written tests for that, and then get into it, and then do my CFII, and then I will actually finish with commercial multi-engine. So that'll be what I finish on. But next is CFI, so I'm getting prepared for that now. But I wanted to come out with a video about this while it's still fresh in my head. So go over this stuff, go over the stuff I said that he didn't ask, and go over everything. Read the FAR aim, read the aim, read the FARs, read the aim. It's just, he told me before the test, it was a private pilot check ride on steroids. So treat it as such. All the stuff that you learn for private, they expect you to know it now that you're a commercial pilot. So demonstrate that you know and you didn't forget, okay? And just be able to go into detail. Remember the FARs, okay? So like, he didn't ask me really like well, I guess he asked me about the minimum equipment. I said 91,205. Remember that stuff. Remember 91,213, 91,211. Be able to have that stuff in your head so that he knows, okay, this kid's actually read the book. So read the book, okay? And I hate reading the book too. It's not fun to read, but for these tests, you have to read them, and you have to be knowledgeable, because you can't cheat on this test. It is your ability to demonstrate that you know what you're doing. And I felt like I did that yesterday. So I now have my commercial pilot's license. Awesome. Definitely a reason to celebrate, but the road is not over, not even close. So moving on to CFI now, and not taking any break. I'm going to start probably tomorrow. I'm giving myself today off studying. I'm going to start on my ground stuff for CFI. So be tuned in for CFI stuff. I'll come out with how that went and everything like that. But I didn't have any other videos about commercial before this one. It's just building time, right? And just doing your commercial maneuvers. Super simple. Just know what I said today, and you'll be fine. So it's already gone for 28 minutes. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and consider subscribing, as I know these videos are helpful for people. They are for me, learning from people that have done it. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.